Oh, hello. You've stumbled upon another episode of the WordsWise Podcast, where we talk about all things philosophy. Tonight we're talking about dreams. What are they? Why do we have them? Have you ever had a lucid dream? And what is the best dream you've ever had? Or some sort of current theme that you've had with your dreams? Please join us. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the WordsWise Podcast. I'm Joe DeVille.
Jesse Witowski.
I'm Sequoia Fussell. Chadwick Raymer.
Today we're talking about dreams. What are they? Why? All sorts of things about dreams. I guess I'll dive in first. So what are dreams? I'm sure all of us have experienced them, and you know them when you have them, but it's basically when you're asleep and you are experiencing some sort of reality. You're seeing things, hearing things, living a life. And my biggest question is, why do we dream? Right now, all I can really say about it is what the science says. There's tests where they put rats in mazes and they are able to see what parts of the brains are lighting up as the rats are running through the mazes. And then they check out the rats' brains while they're asleep and going through the REM sleep where they're dreaming. And the same parts of the brain are lighting up. So the understanding is that we dream so that we can keep learning how to perceive our reality. You might become a better skier if you ski and then you dream about skiing afterwards, just like the rat learns how to understand the maze better. So simply put, that's why we dream, is to get better at what we're doing.
In like a historical context, to kind of bring some light to how long we've been thinking about dreams, it goes back further, I'm sure, but specifically the ancient Greeks had some pretty interesting concepts when it comes to dreams. In particular, the Critica is the interpretation of dreams, which is an ancient treatise that was written, I think, in the 2nd century AD. And basically, this is just like dreams have been interpreted prophetically for hundreds of years up to this point. So it's not like this was a new thing. This was just somebody putting these kinds of ideas down on paper. And the Greeks were fascinated by dreams. They gave aspects of dreams godlike, characteristics. So you had Morpheus, who was like essentially the king aspect of dreams, which would have been prophetic. And then you had Ichillos, or Phobeter, was what was considered a nightmare. And then they broke down dreams, much as we do today, as far as like meaningless dreams and dreams that have prophetic or what we call, I think, more subconscious meaning today. And that's pretty fascinating to me because it just goes to show you that the abstract thought process has been around a long time. This question is about what dreams are and why do we have these things. So in that respect, we still don't really know, which is what's fascinating. This is like one of these big questions that humanity has as far as why we're here, what's our purpose. But dreams are kind of one of those criteria of, what is it? And to me, that's fascinating. And ultimately, my interpretation of that is more of like where dreams come from. My interpretation is more of what would be considered like a holographic concept of the mind, that essentially our brains are more or less like antennae or receptacles for information that's outside of space and time. So essentially what happens is that when we dream, we're accessing that point. It's like a hologram is essentially, the concept is, in a very basic format, is that you're you're focusing a pinpoint of light on a given surface at a very precise location. And so when you're recalling memory and you're recalling, or you're in a dream state, that's essentially what I think is happening. So that information is being brought into our minds and being focused for a specific, either it's based on, something our subconscious wants to convey, perhaps, or the bigger question being that maybe we are, literally going somewhere else, like a completely different reality that's outside of our own normal space-time. Science has just proven recently that we have multiple dimensions in our brain. So that being said, well, it's not out of the realm of possibility that dreams are as well. So in that sense, it makes dreams that much more fascinating, I think, because if that's what's happening, at least to some degree, some of the time, then where is this place? So in my opinion, it is the source of information. It's where all of the information is coming in from. So a hologram, the way it works is that, yeah, you're focusing that pinpoint of light, but there's always a source, and the hologram is the same image. It's not a copy of it. So the information comes from a source and is being brought in. So in that sense, there's got to be some source outside of space-time that is being brought into us, into our brains, to be able to either recall this dream state experience.
I wonder if that explains how shamans in tribal societies learn that the plants in that area, if they're mixed in a certain way, they can create poisons or potions and stuff like that.
That would make you wonder.
Right.
They even called it the dream time, which is fascinating, as far as, the Aborigines of Australia and so forth. So, Yeah,
I like your idea about your brain is an antenna, sort of, and that these ideas are there in the universe.
Right.
Talking to you yesterday, Sequoia, last night, you brought up something kind of similar in that field with your theory of dreams.
Yeah, what Chad was saying tied really closely into a concept I've heard before, that the idea is consciousness is not held within the human body, within the brain. Consciousness is contained in the ether, actually, and our bodies are just vessels for consciousness to have a place in our dimension, in our world. And that idea seems like very, very possible that we are, like you said, an antenna to experience reality of something beyond this realm. And how that would tie into dreaming in my mind is, once that body requires shutting down for the necessity of healing itself, of resting and recovering, the brain kind of transmits, or the consciousness transmits back to the ether in a way, and is led on all sorts of random, nonsensical seeming, or maybe prophetic seeming adventures of just that could be busy work or silly time or something. But the mind, just consciousness, just seems to always be activated.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
To get into a different culture than the Greeks, which Chad brought up, I'm going to delve into the Upanishads from the Hindu Vedic traditions. Thousands of years old, and one of the greatest classical works of religiosity. This one's very short and succinct, and I think it's easy to understand, so let me begin. The first, and these are describing states of consciousness. The first is called Vaishvanara, in which our lives, with all the senses turned outward, are aware only of the external world. Taijasa is the name of the second, the dreaming state, in which, with the senses turned inward, one enacts the impressions of past deeds and present desires. The third state is called prana, of deep sleep, in which one neither dreams nor desires. There is no mind in prana, there is no separateness, but the sleeper is not conscious of this. Let him become conscious in prana, and it will open the door to the state of abiding joy. The fourth is the superconscious state called turiya, neither inward nor outward, beyond the senses and the intellect, in which there is none other than the Lord. He is the supreme goal of life. He is infinite peace and love. Realize him. To go on more of for those with more of an atheistic or less religious tone, only that last line brought up the Lord, or the great supreme God, which is characteristic of their religious tradition. But that it's the transcendent state that encapsulates all three states combined. And those three states, from our waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, another term for those is gross, subtle, and causal. I'll break down those words a little more. Vaishvanara, the first state, the gross state, means all man. And that kind of meant all your sensations and desire, what makes up the physicality of being mankind. Tejasa is derived from the word tejas, which is the splendor of awareness, and that's the dreaming state. Prana is consciousness, and it's more being, not a state. And Turiya just simply means the fourth, because it was beyond description through words itself. So they just called it the fourth state.
So when I was talking about how rats dream about being in the maze, that's kind of the second state, where they're using it in order to relive like past experiences and to kind of focus on present moment things.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I know they went on more of a abstract or Jungian collective consciousness route, but of course there's some dreams that are very personal and just deal with the real world too, whatnot. But it's all turned inward. It's definitely, you're not touching gross physical objects, but subtle, imaginative impressions of those things, no matter how real they may seem during the time of that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that in all cases, dreams seem to be very structured, to where there's states of dreams. So like the Oneri, which are basically personification of dreams, is the idea that there is like two states, two gateways that they pass through. And they come from the land of the West, the land of the setting sun. From darkness, they come out of their cave, and then they go through a series of two gates. One is made of horn, in which you get the prophetic dreams or the meaningful dreams. The other is made of essentially stone, and then that one is basically the meaningless dreams or false dreams or even nightmares in that sense. So in both cases, with the Upanishads and the Greeks and our current understanding of the states of dreams, they're always like sort of gateways, or different aspects of what we would consider a dream state. And I find that really interesting because that seems to be a universal concept.
It's interesting to me too that it's maybe a little looser, but there still seems to be this idea of rules in the dream state. I mean, definitely not as heavy-handed as the rules of the physical world, like gravity and whatnot can be bent, but there's still this idea of rules on a looser, like guideline kind of platform.
Interesting, yeah.
One thing I always thought was interesting about dreams is some part of our brain must not be activated that is the judgment center of it. I can walk outside and look at my backyard, and all of a sudden there's an ocean there. And if it were real life, I know I would instantly say, what the heck is going on? But in a dream, I don't even question it. Okay, there's an ocean here, or that fox is talking to me right now.
Right, it's almost as if you're able to accept that because you expect, this sort of abstraction to exist.
Right, and you don't even realize that you think it's all normal and real, and this is a normal waking life day for me.
Just like by, dropping a pencil in this reality, everyone wouldn't bat an eye about that. But if it floated there, then it's like, well, am I dreaming?
Right.
So yeah, that's a very interesting way to look at it. Because, is our subconscious mind somehow conscious of those rules, perhaps? Or the fact that we're expecting a certain level of abstraction, coming from that.
It's a testament to how absolutely real the dream state seems to feel, that it feels nothing about it is surprising. It feels like you're living another day. having another moment in this dream state that just feels like you're continuing your life. But obviously, and I wonder sometimes if we are even living the same lives as the same person, because unless we have interactions with people in our normal waking lives, we could be just living an entire another person's life in our dream, but we feel like this is me. I'm this person in this dream having these experiences, and it just feels real. So,
right. That's one of the most beautiful questions of life is, are we really dreaming that we're alive?
Right.
Because you know that when you are dreaming, you believe that you're alive.
Right.
So
What's
to
more
say
real?
that that's not happening right now,
Right.
and we're really sleeping in some other dimension?
Yeah. And speaking of states and so forth, over the years, like I've studied my own dreams a lot, and I personally have my own kind of interpretation as far as what the gateways or the states, or I call them bridges. There's like these bridges you got to cross in order to get into this next kind of phase of your dreams. You have essentially like this sort of in-between state, where you're sort of dreaming, you're sort of not. You also are in this state where you're essentially just kind of having a story play out. You're in the story. It could be somewhat meaningless. It could be symbolic. It doesn't matter. It's just you're following kind of like a story. So kind of like in that sense, the archetype, you're in the hero's journey. You're going on a story-based dream. The other would be you're in a more lucid state, so you have control over the aspect of your dream. Maybe you're trying to problem solve, or maybe just enjoy flying, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are other dreams that I've had that don't really fall into any of these categories. One of them is, because a lot of our dreams I think we have are in a first person. And I've talked to other people too, and maybe some of you have too, I can't recall, but where you have a third person view of yourself in the dream. And that is kind of an unusual thing, it's like you're experiencing the dream, but you're also viewing it in a third person, so that I find as a completely other, level of state, in my opinion, because I've had a lot of dreams like that. In some cases, I've had dreams to where I can experience the dream, like what's happening to me in the first person, like feeling, but I'm viewing it third person.
Sure.
So, and then the most bizarre, and this is where I haven't found any context really in any sort of, theories of states, is I've had dreams, or I call them like, when I wake up, I'm incredibly exhausted. And it's because these dreams are so vivid. The detail is like waking life. And I'm always someone else. Like I've even had a dream where I was living in England as a completely different person, had memories of my life and all these different friends, and spoken an accent. And that's crazy. I mean, I don't have any context for any of that, especially the level of detail. So
I've had something very similar where I had, of course, they almost faded instantly upon awakening, but where I'm married to someone and I have 20 years of past memories from this dream state that I do not have according to my own individual life.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't say that I've had anything to those levels, but I did share the idea of a third person and also not being me. I remember a dream where it started out, I was much higher and I was over the water looking at land, and there was an army of knights coming towards the water, and my vision just slammed into the chest of one of the knights, and all of a sudden I was that knight. And the original perspective was a giant Hydra monster, and so this whole army of knights was there to fight this dragon. I was the dragon originally, and then I somehow turned into the knight.
That's interesting.
Maybe you're both.
Yeah.
That's the hero's journey. Turned on both sides in a weird way.
Yeah, those are incredible archetypes, actually, because, you're both the nemesis and the hero at that point, and you're experiencing it from both perspectives.
Right.
And then being at least somewhat, I think, lucid to be able to go from one to the other is kind of interesting.
So lucidity is an interesting thing that you bring up. A lucid dream, for those of you that don't know, lucid dreaming is when you are dreaming and you realize that you're dreaming. So now you can control it because no longer do you have to follow the rules of society or physics, and you can do whatever you want. First thing I want to comment on is flying. A lot of people will try flying, and I always found this was fascinating. Corey told me about this. So there's basically three types of flying in a dream. There's levels of flying, and they go up in how much you're mastering the dream. The first level of flying is being able to jump where you want to go. You may be able to jump across the continent or whatever, but it's always you're lifting yourself up and then you're being pulled down by gravity.
Mhm.
So it's just interesting because even though you know you're lucid dreaming, you still have to follow some sort of rule of physics that you know to be true.
Right.
The other one is swimming through the water, where the air is just like water. So it's a little bit more controlled. You can turn, you can go here and there, but it's not necessarily fast, and it's an effort and a struggle. And then the third level is basically Superman flying, where you can just speed around like a rocket. And honestly, whenever I've flown in a dream, it's always been jumping. I don't know. Have you guys experienced that yourselves, and what levels have you guys found?
I would even say there's more. Like I've had some that are just a stationary float, where there's no movement, but you're up in the air.
You just pick yourself up and levitate, basically.
Or maybe I even just start out there and never move from that point on, and I'm just witnessing stuff like almost like that bird's eye you're talking about. And then even beyond the Superman to a certain level, I've had blips.
Oh, teleporting.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe it is even just flight, but it's just so fast that it's beyond your eyes recognition.
Yeah, just speaking of flight and whatnot, I don't have them like, it's not a really consistent theme in my dreams. I mean, I've had several of them, but I dream more archetypal kind of things, so the flying isn't always an aspect. But I have to mention this dream because it was so strange. Is that I had you guys know Ash from The Evil Dead?
Groovy.
Oh yeah. Big fan.
Chainsaw hand. I was Ash,
Wow.
and I was looking for my chainsaw hand because this crazy demon witch was like chasing me, and so I had to get away from her really fast. So I jumped, and I jumped like really, really high, and was like sort of jumping and then sort of floating, and then I caught wind and sort of like flew a bit, and then eventually sort of like came down, kind of like what you're describing. So that's probably the most recent dream I had like that. I've had all the ones that you're discussing, you know, even like the floating ones, or I don't know if I'd call it teleportation because it's kind of hard to say because it happens so fast. You're just here and then you're there, kind of a thing. But the most consistent that I've had is definitely just like the Superman flying.
Wow.
I had one that was really unusual to where I was flying like really high altitude. And this was up by Tahoe, kind of like going up and from here up towards that direction. And I recognized the buttes off in the distance and whatnot. So I knew what I was saying. Like I even saw like was it Highway 80 and all that. So it was like I was flying around in like, you know, a helicopter or something like that. It was pretty bizarre, very, very vivid, you know. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's control or if that's just like we're getting to a point where the laws of physics just don't seem to apply. Like we're allowing ourselves to kind of break the rules a little bit. So I guess in that sense it's control, but it's almost like we just need to forget that those rules even
No, I'd agree with that. Like there's definitely some flight dreams where they're lucid and sometimes not lucid.
Right, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Whereas the Ash dream, I was like I was kind of going like in a story, you know, but I was also somewhat lucid. Like I knew like, okay, this is crazy, you know, I'm like jumping really high and, you know, like flying right now. And wasn't really like fearful of this crazy witch lady, but I was like, well, this is the dream. I'm Ash, so I gotta go find my chainsaw hand, you know. So, but yeah.
Do you work at lucid dreaming? Is that something that you practice and you try to hone in your waking life?
Never have. I just tend to have them. Always have. So, and I personally like story dreams. I really do. I think you're really missing like almost the point of dreams. It seems like, you know, I mean, it's fun and it's powerful, feeling, to be able to like control the lucidity of your dreams, I think. But in my opinion, I find it much more productive in myself to just allow the story to just take its course and not try to control it.
Right.
I have complete agreement with that actually. Like sometimes the fun almost fades as soon as you realize you're lucid.
Yeah.
Whereas almost rather the surprise and the adventure come up before me and not be lucid.
Yeah.
That's so funny that you say that, because when I was younger, I worked at getting the skills developed for lucid dreaming, and it worked, and I got good at it. But I don't intentionally lucid dream anymore. I'm not even sure why, but I think it has to do with the same reason. It's more fun to just be thrown in and not know what's going on. And I want to tell you guys, if you don't know how to lucid dream, there are techniques that you can do that will really help, and I'll give you some ideas right now. The first one is routinely ask yourself, am I dreaming in your waking life? You might want to set your clock to beep on the hour and think about it. Put post-its up at certain things like your mirror and your computer, so that when you're sitting there, just keep thinking to yourself, am I dreaming? And then it's important to test it, because there's been plenty of times where I've been dreaming and I think, am I dreaming? No, this is real. And then I just ignore that, but I was dreaming. So one way to test it is to either look at a clock or read some sort of text somewhere, then look away from that, look back, and if it reads the same way twice, you're in the real world. But it's amazing. I've had times where I was at work and I think to myself, am I dreaming? Just because I was routinely getting used to it. And then I thought, no, this is real, but I'll test it out. And I would open up a book, look at a few words in a sentence, look away and look back, and it was totally different. And all of a sudden, wow, I really am dreaming, and it would be true. So that's how you can realize that you're lucid dreaming. But then one thing that happens a lot, it happened for me, is you get excited that you're lucid dreaming and you start to wake up. It's a really interesting sensation, because you reach this middle ground of, I know that my body's in bed and I'm asleep, and I have these perfect visuals of a dream, but they're sort of fading away and the edges are going away, and I'm realizing more and more that I'm in bed, and eventually I wake up. So if that starts happening to you, what you want to do is keep your real eyes, your sleeping eyes closed in your physical body, and keep your dream eyes open, and start spinning around in circles, taking in the environment of the dream. It just pulls you right back into that dream, and you will forget that you're asleep again, but you'll be dreaming, and you'll be lucid dreaming. So I had this happen to me one time, and it's just this is an example of how powerful dreams are, and I think how powerful we are. So I was at work, I did this whole thing where I realized I was dreaming, and then, great, I'm lucid dreaming. I don't want to be at work, that's for sure. So I'm going to go somewhere else. And I leapt up into the clouds. This was my version of flying. It was always jumping. So I jump and I go into the clouds and I start to come down. And as I go through the clouds, I look where I'm going to land, and it's the middle of the ocean. And I see myself going towards the water, and as I'm splashing into the water, I think to myself, not the ocean, that's where the monsters are. And I look down into the dark abyss of the ocean, and I see two monsters. One of them looked like a praying mantis, the other one a sea serpent, but they both had serpentine kind of undulations, and they were coming up towards me. And because I was still lucid dreaming, I just told myself, yeah, but this is a lucid dream. I'm dreaming, and I know they don't have any power over me. And they swam right past me. It's just one of those things of, we're more powerful than we think we are, and I believe if it's true in a dream, it's true in real life also.
I've had many instances where I've been injured in a dream, and I'm sure you guys have had this too, like you just described. If an outcome of the dream isn't what you want it to be, or something happens in it that you don't want, then I've had moments to where I've had the story escape, and then there was something that happened in the story I didn't like, immediately became lucid and changed the projection of the story at that point. So, and sometimes I'll wake up and then go back into the dream and do that very same thing. In fact, there was like a couple of years of my life where that's what I did. Like I would wake up early in the morning, like when Ava, my daughter, was first born, I would have to get up like, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes. So I would get up, do my thing with her, and then I'd go lay down again, and then I would recall the dream completely as much as I could, and then go back, and I would eventually fall back asleep into that dream and then change the outcome of it. So I got pretty good at doing that kind of a thing. You know, that's, I think to me that's more empowering as far as being lucid. You know, that's, I think where that to me like has value, but that was always after the story played out. So that at least empowered me to have control over my dream, but I wasn't controlling the story, you know, not completely. It still could like kind of run its course in that sense. So
Yeah, I had if you guys want to share, the question is, have you ever died in a dream? Because I had one, and it wasn't lucid. It was just living a story, and it was really exciting. It was very John Carter of Mars, where I was on another planet helping another alien race overcome civil oppression. And
that's right.
after I did it, I was captured by the king and sentenced to death. And they basically put me down this like laundry chute that went into this dungeon, and there were these white maggot creatures that just started eating me. And I just got eaten. There was no pain,
Right.
but I just remember like they all kind of just swarmed upon me, and it just faded to black. And that dream was done, and I started another one or ended up waking up. But yeah.
I was going to ask, upon the realization of death, did it wake you up?
I don't recall actually waking up. I might have just jumped into another dream. I just remember the fading to black.
Yeah.
And I'm here now, so I assume I survived. Or maybe it was a whole other dimension and I didn't.
Right, that you is dead.
Yeah.
Bring back the real Joe!
What did you do with him? Oh my God. But at least I went down saving a whole society. So
I've come close. I've never actually died in my dreams, but you know, again, like where I get injured or something like that, I'll immediately change the projection of my dream because I'll immediately become lucid of the situation, and then I'm like, nah, I don't like this. Let's go this direction. You know, I have been injured a lot in my dreams, but never to the point of death or like people talk about falling dreams a lot. I've only had like maybe a few in my whole life, and
me too. I don't know if I have.
I've never really experienced that sort of like falling into the abyss like Margaret just had, you know, my wife. She had a dream the other night where she was lost and then eventually fell into like this, you know, big abyss, and never experienced that before in my dreams ever. And so I can't really, you know, relate to that or even the idea of dying in the dream, but as far as being injured, yeah. And then like the whole sort of like fading to black and or jumping to another dream, absolutely. You know, so before we move on from this, there's one thing that I've been doing for a while, about a year. This is kind of like an experiment in dreams. Is that what I do? Is I'll lay in bed, close my eyes, and then immediately I'm opening my eyes in a different place. So I picture myself laying on a bed in the same place, and as soon as I lay down and close my eyes here, I'm literally laying down there, opening my eyes there.
So you're imagining yourself.
Yeah. So I'm imagining myself doing this in the exact same place, you know, every single time. And then each time I'm trying to create more detail to the room that I'm in. To like, I look out this window and I see this landscape and I try to visualize the landscape as much as possible and all these details. And then I go through a routine every single time this happens where I get up, put on my slippers, and you know, go out of the room and then try to visualize as much of the space as possible, and even going outside. And then there's a trail that I take that goes into these woods and so forth. What I found with this, not only is it just an interesting, like, you know, thought experiment,
Meditation.
right? But I've been able to like really visualize this space with incredible detail, because the more I visualize it every night, the more I don't have to think of these things. They're already there. So when I lay down and I open my eyes in that space, all the things that I had already visualized are there. So it's like a painting in that sense, where you're kind of like getting like the rough details first, and then you're going through and making them sort of the finer brush strokes as you're going. And I've dreamt of this place. So that was kind of like the whole reason for the thought experiment to begin with, is I wanted to project myself into this place if possible.
And just so I'm clear, when you wake up when you imagine yourself waking up, are you waking up in your room and walking down a trail, or this is all a dream world that you've created?
This is a complete dream space. It's real in the sense that like I'm trying to project like I'm waking up in an English cottage, in an English countryside, and trying to visualize all of those. So I don't have a lot of reference point either. So I have to do a lot of like, what would this look like, and really try to bring as much, reality to it as possible. So it's a very hard process, but I've got a little bit better at it as I've done it. And what I found is that, yeah, I will dream about this place now. So, and the dreams are vivid, very much so. And thought it was like, as far as the lucidity,
right.
It's another way of kind of doing that, but you're actually able to project yourself into a space that you want to be in.
Well, that's amazing, and it reminds me of an important technique I forgot to say, which is keep a dream journal. Write down your dreams when you wake up, and even more importantly, write down what you want to dream right before you go to bed. It's all part of conditioning your mind to just pay attention to the fact that we dream in the real world, and when we think about it in the real world, we'll think about it in the dream world.
Absolutely. I cannot say enough about a dream journal. I totally agree with that, because the more, especially if you're doing that as soon as you wake up, you're recalling the dream, and then you're recalling again and having like a sensory, aspect to it too by writing it down.
Right.
So yeah. I definitely agree with that. Absolutely.
So another question I want to ask you guys, if you have any comments on it, is just to maybe comment on, we've already talked about it a bit, but what's maybe an example of like a great dream that you've had, or a poignant dream, or a consistent theme that you guys notice in your own dreams that you think about. For me, for the longest time, I have a consistent dreams for me tend to be me trying to solve some sort of problem. And it's usually, I might have a device like a calculator. Oh, I just have to put in the number 12,000. And I start pushing the numbers, but different numbers are popping up. And it's not like I'm getting frustrated or pissed off at it. I just, oh, no, that's not the right number. So what's going on here? Clear and try it again. Oh, so like the 5s are 3s? Like this is kind of broken. I still have to type 12,000. So what's the other one? And that's just one example. Sometimes, oh, I have to go to that building up there, but it's at the top of a mountain. So everything's more complicated than it needs to be, it seems, in my dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that quite a bit of like, oh, I just need to get to the top of this mountain, but I just need to move my legs up and down, but my leg weighs 1,000 pounds and I just cannot seem to move it. It seems to be a real common theme in dreams to have a simple task that you just cannot move towards, and it's so frustrating. You can't understand what is going on, that I can't do this thing. Why?
I'm so glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, when you factor in fear or the nightmare aspect of a dream, that can mean you're about to die, or something is assaulting you, or something you're running from. And then to tie into what Chad was saying, some of the most vivid experiences I've had are falling dreams. I guess you were saying you don't have them very often, but I have them quite frequently, and just like, oh, I just stepped too far off a cliff and I'm falling, and it's the most violent transition from the dream world to waking state of just like my body actually shakes. And it's a pretty common experience for me of just like being violently woken up. Sometimes it's right as I'm falling asleep. Sometimes it is pretty deep into the night and just in the middle of a really long, detailed dream, and the transition is quite shocking. Whoa. And then a lot of times I'll be just about to fall asleep, and my brain is just halfway in reality and dream world, and I realize I'm dreaming. And that almost immediately jerks me right out of it and wakes me up. But like, oh yeah. So
now you start spinning around in your dream. Just look at those visuals, man. It's amazing. It works. Gets you right back in there. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. This was Dreams. And what are your dreams? Curious. Why do you think we dream? Have you ever lucid dreamt? And what's something that's a best dream that you've had, or any kind of unusual thing or consistent theme? Please leave them in the comments. Always like and subscribe, and thanks for being here today, and we'll catch you next time.